Chapter 6. Playing Chords. Now that we have a sound understanding of what chords are, the major type, and how they are notated, let's take a look at how you can apply this to practical piano playing. How pianists read music notes. Before we tackle playing chords, let's study the basics of reading a music sheet and playing the piano with your right and left hand. This knowledge is not just useful for playing chords, but for playing scales and more as well. It is important that you remember that music sheets are read from left to right. This practice began because the music was originally a practice that was concentrated on the development of notes on a scale in a horizontal fashion. In historical times, when people sang together, they usually did so in unison. This was the norm until the 9th century, when vertical harmony and polyphony became popular. Polyphony refers to the variety of notes or voice that can use simultaneously played or sang. Instruments that utilized keyboards like the harpsichord and the piano were created to signify the changing needs of the music words and to support vertical harmonies. The notes to be played on them were adapted into notations in a horizontal manner, so piano players need to be mindful of these nuances. The first thing you need to do when reading a music sheet is to identify where the treble clef is. Identifying this will let you know which notes you should play with your right hand. Knowing the letter names of the spaces and lines on the staff will help you with this. Make this a practical exercise to solidify the memory. Take a staff paper, starting from the bottom in the first space, label the spaces F, A, C, and E, moving up one space at a time. Next, do the same time by starting at the bottom of the staff, label the lines E, G, B, D, and F, moving up one line at a time. Remembering the notes that fall in the spaces is easy because it spells out the word face. A popular trick for remembering the notes that fall on the lines is memorizing the phrase, "Every good boy deserves fudge." The acronym spells out E, G, B, D, F. These letters represent the white keys on the keyboard. This means that you do not have to worry about flats or sharps at this point. We will focus on the black keys later on. This is not a practice that advanced piano players typically use, but as a beginner player, it is perfectly fine to do. Take a music sheet with music that you would like to play. On the right side of the treble clef, write the letter name underneath the corresponding musical notes. Once you have memorized the names of the letter on the line and spaces for your right hand, you can move on to reading the notes on the bass clef. These notes indicated the lines and spaces you should use your left hand to play. Again, let's get practical and label staff. Starting at the bottom, right of the bass clef, label the spaces A, C, E, G, and B, moving up one space at a time. Use the phrase, "All cows eat grass," to help you remember the notes. Next, label the lines, start from the bottom, right of the bass clef, label the lines G, B, D, F, and A. Again, memorizing the phrase, "Every good boy deserves fudge," will help here. As you can see, the notes on the lines match up for both hands. Repeat the remaining steps by making a musical sheet and writing the letter names underneath the corresponding musical notes right of the bass clef. There is another technique to use numbers to represent each of the notes each finger plays. You can create a diagram of both of your hands to make this easier for you. On your right hand, starting on the thumb, label each finger from 1 to 5. Repeat the same with your left hand. Using this number technique is great for learning songs that are recommended for beginner pianists. Such songs include Jingle Bells, Mary Had a Little Lamb, Three Blind Mice, and Hot Cross Buns. They are perfect for beginners because they only use the notes C, D, E, F, and G. These correspond to the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. To utilize this technique, align your fingers with the keys, but placing both thumbs on middle C. Your right pinky, which is finger number 5, will end up on G. Your left pinky, which is finger number 5, will end up on F. You can write these numbers next to the letter names that you have already placed on the music sheet. Start with the white keys first. To incorporate the black keys, use the same application of letter names here. Tips for playing the piano with both hands. It can be quite the task trying to use both your hands at the same time to do different activities. And this is an area where many beginner pianists struggle. This is because our hands and feet are naturally inclined to mirror the same movement. Therefore, making two different motions confuses the brain. You have to actively get your brain used to the fact that your hand has to perform different movements at the same time, and the only way to do this is with consistent, persistent practice. To help you play the piano with both hands at the same time, here are a few tips. Improve your music sheet reading skills. As a beginner pianist, it will be difficult to coordinate your hands and fingers while reading the notes on the music sheet. By taking the time to get your mind accustomed to the notes on the sheets, you can more readily do the movements that they demand. The tips outlined in the section above will help you with this. Initially, practice playing the piano with each hand individually, before trying to play with both hands at the same time. Break down tasks into smaller units makes them easier to accomplish and allows you to keep from becoming overwhelmed. When you do start to practice playing the piano with both hands, begin slowly. The more you practice, the more you will develop the instinctive feel of how notes go together. A great tip is to use a metronome to help you develop your playing skills. Do not stress out over playing the piano. You will make mistakes. Every pianist makes mistakes, no matter their skill level. Keeping that in mind, just let things flow as you play. The coordination of your hands will come to a lot easier when you are mentally at ease. Use visualization techniques. A mind is a powerful tool. What you think is what you physically manifest. Therefore, visualize yourself playing the piano with both hands often. Ensure that the mental imagery includes you pressing the correct keys with both hands. How to play chords. Let's take a look at how to play chords now. There really is not much to it. All you need to do is practice. Remember that major chords are triads. Let us use C major as an example of how to play this type of chord. We will continue to use the C scale to indicate examples throughout this section. C major has a pattern of C, E, and G. This equates to playing the notes 1, 3, and 5. 1 represents C, 3 represents E, and 5 represents G. All you have to do is play the notes 1, 3, and 5 on the scale simultaneously, and you have played the C major chord. This practice applies to any major chord, whether it is D major, E major, or F. Just play the notes 1, 3, and 5 of that scale. Playing minor chords is only slightly different. Again, using C minor as the example, we will see the pattern of C, E flat, and G. This corresponds to playing numbers 1, flat 3, and 5. The 3 are flat because the third is lowered 1/2 step. The same goes for all the other minor chords. Playing the major 7th chord involves using the 1, 3, 5, and 7 on the scale. On this C major 7th chord, this is C, E, G, and B. On the other hand, the minor 7th chord is played using the 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7 notes. This corresponds to C, flat E, G, and flat B on the C minor 7th chord. The dominant 7th chord is played with the numbers 1, 3, 5, and flat 7 on the scale. To play the C dominant 7th chord, the corresponding notes are C, E, G, and B flat. This is a C major chord with an added flat 7th note. Apply the same principles to all dominant 7th chords. To play the suspended 2nd chord, the notes 1, 2, and 5 are used. Therefore, for the C, D, and G notes are played. For the suspended 4th chord, notes 1, 4, and 5 are played. This corresponds to the notes C, F, and G. The augmented chord plays notes 1, 3, and sharp 5 for the major scale. To play a diminished chord on the piano, you use the notes of 1, flat 3, and flat 5. The C diminished chord has a pattern of C, E flat, and G flat, so you can see how this number pattern applies. Different ways of playing piano chords. The first way to play piano chords is by playing to a set beat. This is the easier way to play chords and so is a great starting point for beginners. All you have to do is play the chords for the musical piece, one every beat or more. One every 2 or 4 beats are the most common ways to play chords in this manner. You do this using either your left hand or your right hand. The next method involves playing the chord with either your left hand or your right hand while using the unused hand to play the root note. This is a technique used when the pianist can correctly pinpoint different types of chords on the piano. Once the player is secure in this knowledge, then he or she can complement the chords that he or she plays by adding the other hand to play the root note, which is the note that the chord is based on. For example, if the C major chord, which has the notes of C, E, and G, is being played with the right hand, then the root note of C would be played with the left hand. You can build on this chord technique by playing the chord and then stretch the hand over an octave. This allows the player to play the root 2 times, 2 different pitches. Another way to play chords includes the chord with either the left hand or the right hand while playing the arpeggio with the unused hand. An arpeggio is a chord whereby each note is played on its own in descending order or ascending order. For a C major chord, it can be played either as C, E, G, and C again in ascending order, or as C, G, E, and C again in descending order. The final method is playing the chord with either the left hand or the right hand, while the unused hand plays the melody. This is the most challenging way to play a chord. How to enhance chords. Chords are the building blocks of music, and just as you can enhance the look of a house or other building after using building blocks, you can enhance chords with additions. These additions add variety and interest to the chord so that you do not hear the same sounds over and over again. Here is a list of the variations you can add to chords and how they enhance chords. Inversions. This enhancement involves the notes exchanging places. Let us use the C major chord as an example. The standard way that the notes are situated is C, E, and G. By using inversion, you will have 2 alternate versions of this, which are E, G, and C, and G, C, and F. These chords are called C/E, which is a C major with the E at the bottom, and C/G, which is a C major with the G at the bottom. As long as you play the C note, you are playing the C major chord. Both of these are slashed chords. Inversions are useful because they maximize your hand movements on the keyboard because they allow smaller movements of the fingers. This allows you to play faster. This maximization of movement also allows the player to be more comfortable due to the minimal motions. Lastly, playing inverted chords creates smooth lines between the chords. Chord additions. This involves adding a single tone to the chords. In the case of major and minor chords, it is as simple as adding a 9th tone to the chord. While adding 9th sounds fancy and complicated, it is as simple as adding the 2nd tone of the scale again. For example, the C major chord looks like this: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you continue this pattern, it will look something like this. A pattern is shown in the written version of this book, going from C, again, all the way to C, and numbered 1 through 21. This can run into an infinite pattern, but the thing to take away from this is the position of the 9th note. It is D in this instance, but as you will notice, it is also the 2nd note on the scale. This addition adds interest to a chord. You can make other additions like the 13th, which is also the 6th. Chord extensions. These are similar to chord additions, but differ in the octave in which the addition is done. In chord additions, the addition is done in the same octave. On the other hand, chord extensions occur in the next octave, hence how the chord extension happens. Chord arpeggios. This situation involves breaking up the notes of the chords into individuals instead of sounding them together. Chord omissions. This involves excluding notes that are not vital to the sound of the chord. This omission is usually the 5th note. It is considered one of the unessential notes because it does not contribute to the interest of the chord or to the essence of the major or minor chord. Omitting this chord does not affect the tone or stability of the chord, and so it is safe to do so. The omission of the fifth note is not so easy with augmented or diminished chords because they have flats and sharp Bs. These altered fifths play a vital role in the sound of the chord. It is also possible to omit the root, but it is not as easy as excluding the fifth. Even though it is a note that does not provide movement to the chord, it does add tonality. This is easiest accomplished on the dominant seventh chords. Other notes that can be omitted with caution include the 9th and 13th. These chord alterations listed above are only a few of the variations that can be accomplished. Others include chord pattern variations, melody lines, and octave switching.